I'm gonna need it. This episode was a lot. A lot. You talk about intensity. I felt that coming through the screen. Through the screen. There are so many people that are gonna get whacked in this video. There's some that are gonna get whacked that didn't have points too, so they're gonna get whacked. But then I'm gonna talk about how they were right. But some people's true colors showed. And I was very happy one in particulars did, but y'all already know who I'm talking about. Y'all know I've been waiting on this day. Been waiting on it. But yeah, I'm going to get on him for real, for real. Like I'm about to light him up like it's the 4th of July. It's coming on Friday, but you know. Wow. I know y'all got a lot of thoughts. Pull up a chair because we're about to get into it. This is going to be probably the longest recap of the season. This is probably the most dramatic episode of TV that I've seen in a long time. A long time. We're going live tomorrow as well. Myself and Elise are going live tomorrow. We didn't go last week, but we're going this week. We got too much to talk about. So turn your post notifications on. Do that now. Also, go follow my TikTok right now. Go do that right now. It's in the bio. Go do that right now because I'm going to post a little snippet over there. Go thumbs that up so we can get the views going over there. And like the video. Subscribe if you're new. We're on the road to 11,000. 11,000? 15,000. I'm so... you see how my mind is literally racing right now? So I'm just going to go ahead and get onto it now because I know what y'all waiting for. All right, my God. I got so many notes. We start off with Nick and Cierra. They're talking about how good they feel about the date and whatever and closing off. Essentially, she tells him and tells us that he makes her happy. She's happy how he makes her. These conversations, I really don't even want to talk about them right now because everything that really is a talking point is that challenge, but we'll get to it. But Bryan and Jaden, they're talking. He ends up asking about her profession. She always looks disinterested to me, but she seemed very much interested in him from what she was telling us and telling the girls. But he asked her about her typical type. She says tall, dark, and handsome. That is not Austin. That is Bryan. So go for Bryan. Go for Bryan, Jaden. I want the best for you, Jaden, and Austin is not that. We'll get to that in a minute. But she then tells him that. He then tells her essentially like, you turned my head, and Jaden was pretty much telling us like she didn't feel like she was open because she was happy with Austin, but this conversation with Bryan opened her eyes, and Bryan pretty much is letting her know he's very intentional with the way that he moves and he is interested in her. Nick and Huda, they are at the dock, and he ends up asking her on the side like what was your point of view when it comes to that challenge? Like, why did you do what you did? Why do you feel the way that you did? So she ends up stating that she was always told that it's just a challenge, Huda. It's just a challenge. And essentially, I'm not trying to get with Ace. Whatever, Huda. Whatever. But Nick then says, like, I get your point of view, but the line was crossed. It was. Like, I don't want to keep repeating what I always repeat and have been doing. We all know it's just a challenge. But the reason why all of us that see Chelley's perspective are on Huda's head is because Huda does not, she moves in a way where she has rules that applies to everybody else but her. So whenever you do something that you don't want done to you, I'm going to address that shit. I'm a Leo through and through. I keep mental notes of when people try to check me about some shit. And if you end up doing that shit, I'm going to let you know about it. So that's why Chelley did what she did. Because Huda was like what happens later. We're going to get to it. And y'all already know I'm going to make the merch. Somebody said make the merch. I'm going to go make some merch. But yeah. So he then asked her like if her and Chelley have talked. And she's like, no, I'm just essentially giving her space. And Huda then says that she's going to take full accountability and she won't do it again. And then she says, I'll learn from it. Bullshit. Because if you was going to learn from it, you would have learned from it the first time you did that shit to Hannah. But again, her fans and everybody else that's believing her bullshit is going to eat that up. Not me. But Nick then tells her, like, I'm here for you. And I just don't want you feeling alone in this house, which is hilarious. I literally wrote eye roll. And he proved me right yet again later on. But we'll get to it with his fake ass. But he then says that Huda then says like Nick has his head on straight and he gives her different perspectives. And that made her realize what she did was wrong, even though she already knew that it was wrong, which exactly. Always trying to play the victim, but you always know that you're wrong, which means you're not doing it intentionally. You try to act like you didn't know you were doing this and didn't know you were doing that, but you always know what you're doing because you're not as stupid as you want us to believe that you are. But it's nighttime. Pepe is telling TJ about him and Andreina's conversation and her pretty much respecting him, friend zoning her. She's telling the girls that she got friend zoned for the first time in her life. Amaya's like, he's a weirdo. Everybody heads off to bed. TJ and Iris, they go camping, which is upstairs in Soul Ties. They're sleeping outside. Ace is mentioning to Amaya that he realizes that she snores a lot. She's like, no, I don't. He was like, you do. And she was like, that's embarrassing. It was a little funny little moment between the two of them. But TJ and Iris, they're sleeping in soul ties, like I said. Cierra and Nick, they're having sex yet again. Just disrespectful. Like, constantly having sex like that is crazy. Like, if you're going to have sex like that, go somewhere else. Like, they're trying to sleep. Like, come on. Even though we all know it's probably 60 seconds, but like, let's be for real. But Taylor's sitting there with his mouth wide open because he can hear it. But the next day, Ace was dancing in front of Taylor, and Taylor with that arch back was, I don't know if y'all caught it, but I know TikTok gonna catch it. I had to mention it. But Zach, he then brings Amaya breakfast as well as Olandria breakfast. Amaya was looking over like, oh, okay. But Ace brings Shelley breakfast with her flowers. Yeah, same old, y'all know. But Amaya, she then goes to pull Zach for a conversation. And TJ, Iris, Cierra, and Nick, they're over across the yard watching it. So Amaya then says to Zach, like, we didn't speak yesterday at all. You essentially prioritize being with the guys, which, I mean, is fine. Zach says, I didn't speak to anybody yesterday. You liar. Liar, because you spoke to Olandria. You spoke to Olandria, and he didn't even tell her that, if I'm remembering correctly. Regardless, you're lying, because you did speak to somebody else. You intentionally went and spoke to Olandria, so you're lying in her face. Like, Zach, I told y'all know, ever since he and Amaya started talking, I kept telling y'all, something about him is just not sitting right with me. And he literally proved it. My intuition is always right. It's always right. I don't want to sound cocky, but it is. And don't ever steer me wrong. But he says that she didn't ask him, like, do you think that I'm jealous? Because it's not that. I'm not jealous. And he was like, no, but Amaya then cuts him off. Y'all know how Amaya get whenever she gets hot. She started cutting him off when he was trying to finish the conversation. He couldn't even respond, essentially. But she then says, like, I'm single as fuck, even though I'm literally coupled with you. And he was like, I mean, we both have legs. Like, you didn't come and pull me for chats. She shouldn't have to. Like I told y'all in every single recap, every single interaction they've had, she has initiated a lot of the contact, a lot of the conversation truthfully. Like, what I tell y'all every single time, they end their conversations with her asking for a kiss. I've always told y'all I can't stand how she is always the one initiating it, which means he doesn't really like her. Which I'm glad she literally says, like, I don't want to be the one always initiating shit. And I'm like, you don't need to be that. And I'm glad that she realized that. But he says, like, I slowly started opening up to you, but certain things and certain actions that she did, I think he's saying this to us. He says he slowly started opening up to her, but like certain actions and things that she did, he says it was constant, but he was moving too quick. Y'all, Zach, I told y'all this too. Zach talks too fast. And then I feel like sometimes some of the shit he be saying, it does not flow. It doesn't make sense. It's not connecting. So I sat and this is the moment where I put in my community page. I don't think I put it in my community page. I think I put it on Twitter. A couple of these conversations made no sense. And this, I believe, some of this did not make any sense to me. But he then starts saying that he's not ready for this shit, essentially. And I'm assuming he's meaning with him and Amaya. If he's stating in regards to like being in a relationship, get off the show. Because like if you weren't ready for that, then you shouldn't have been here. But he then says in his confessional, there's been a lot of miscommunication. But in his head, he's essentially in two different places, aka he's thinking about Olandria as well. But Amaya starts getting emotional, as we know she does, and he ends up telling her, "I don't want to make you cry." Essentially, I'll make more of an effort to actually get to know you and do a little bit more for you. And he gives her a hug. We'll get to him later on. But TJ then asks, like, how do y'all feel? Asking Nick, Cierra, and Iris how they feel about Chris and Huda with the Shelley situation. And Nick says, like, Chris is more into Huda now. He is now because Shelley is not really giving him too much attention. But Nick then says Huda essentially took accountability when I talked to her, and she took it off rip whenever we talked. Chris and Bryan, they're having a conversation, and Chris is talking about how he had cuddles with Huda after their conversation, and they're kissing the speakeasy. So he then says, like, I'm stepping back off of Shelley because, I mean, essentially it's not reciprocated, even though I still like her. Remember, he said that. But Bryan then says, like, I actually like your and Huda's vibe. And Chris was like, yeah, I do too. We then see Huda over there talking to Andreina and Olandria about the kiss. And Olandria is like, so where's his mind at? She then says, like, he told me that he enjoys talking to me. And after talking to me, I essentially changed his mind. And, I mean, did he say that to her? But regardless, he told us basically he's really now locking in on Huda because Shelley's not giving him the attention. Like, Huda is the backup plan. She just don't realize that, but we know that. But she then says, like, he's sweet. he doesn't get defensive, and when she brings up stuff, it's a little bit different. Like, it's different than what she's normally used to. But she then tells us, like, she's trying to be, well, she tells them that she's trying to be vulnerable, but she's just not trying to get hurt. No, she told us that she's not trying to get hurt. But Chris, he ends up asking Bryan, like, what you got going on? So Bryan pretty much lets him know he's interested in Jaden. He wants to continue to pull her more. And he pretty much tells us in his confessionals that Jaden turned his head and he feels like his and Andreina's conversations essentially have stopped, and he doesn't want to put all his eggs in her basket. He wants to take some of them eggs and transfer it into Jaden's, which I'm all for. I actually would like that. Bryan's one of the only guys in this house, at least right now, that seems to be a good dude. Like, he won points for me later on, but we'll get to it. But he then says that he wants to get to know Jaden, but he wants to make it known as well that he's interested in her. Jaden's over there telling Clarke and Gracyn about how good her and Bryan's conversation was. She says it was the best first conversation that she's had in there. So I'm happy about that. I'm glad that the both of them are enjoying each other. Hopefully it works because we can get rid of Austin. Let's do that. But Gracyn does that, and she said Gracyn ends up asking those two girls if they feel like their couples are making it difficult for them to get to know other people. And Clarke says, yeah, definitely me. I said, what you mean? Definitely you. Do you not want Taylor? That's what I was thinking. And they're like, y'all essentially are alike. Like, you and Taylor are alike. And she was like, yeah, it's crazy because he's still open to exploring. Clarke, some of the stuff Clarke be saying, it just don't make sense to me. I'm like, dude, I be questioning, like, what are your real intentions? But Gracyn then says that she's surprised with the affection that Taylor is showing Clarke, which we all were, because it was like the way he was with Olandria, we all knew he didn't like her, but it's just like, it's interesting. It's interesting to watch. But Clarke says, you get me, bitch. Keep talking. I'm like, so what? I'm like, are you confused and shocked about it too? Like, that's what I'm talking about with Clarke. Some of the stuff that she says, it just does not connect. It doesn't flow. It doesn't make sense to me. But she tells us in her confessional that they have a real connection, and there's smooches and stuff here and there, and he makes her happy, and she doesn't know if that makes some people happy, that he makes her happy. Basically, she's talking about Olandria. Clarke looked really pretty. She looked really, really pretty in this scene. She looked really pretty in this whole episode, but yeah. But we get Olandria and Cierra. This is what I was talking about when the conversations were not making sense. Cierra then asked Olandria how her chat was with Zach. And Olandria's like, I mean, well, I literally tried to start writing down what they said. I literally wrote, after rewinding it probably 5 times with my sister, we both was like, what are they trying to say? I wrote down, Olandria and Cierra are confusing me because they made it seem like Zach was doing more in comparison to Taylor, yet they turned around and said that Taylor was overly gentlemanlike because he knows exactly what to do. I said, what? I'm like, what? I don't get it, because it started off sounding like they was trying to make it seem like Zach did more than Taylor, but then it ended with them stating that Taylor does essentially more than... I was like, what the fuck? Did y'all understand it? Because if you did, tell me down below. But Olandria then says, at the end of the day, Zach is a great guy, and he's mature, and he knows what he wants. I don't believe that now. But Cierra then says, like, what about your other options, aka Taylor, which should not be an option for Olandria. But she says essentially his mind is not made up yet. That's still my strongest connection. It's not. And she says no matter how much she wants to cut him off, essentially that is her strongest connection. I said, Olandria, you losing me. You lose me. Every time she talks about Taylor, I'm like, but we'll get to it. But Taylor then tells Nick and Ace that every day he's liking Clarke more and more, and now he's thinking how he needs to navigate the situation with Olandria. I said, I hate this man. I hate him because it makes no sense. I don't hate him. I don't hate him because I don't really care, but I strongly dislike him because I'm like, you like to play games because you've known all along you did not like Olandria. So why are you sitting here acting like you need to navigate a situation with her? You just like the attention and you like making her look like a fool. That's really what it all comes down to. Like, you are the villain in this situation because, yes, Olandria should be smart enough to see that you really don't like her because it's all the signs are there. And he made it abundantly clear to her at the recoupling that he does not like her. So, yes, a part of that is Olandria's fault, but a large part of that is yours, too, because you've known from, day 1, maybe day 2, that you did not like her. So for you to continue to still string her along after you already made your decision because you went and told her that you still were open to getting to know her, like, you're a loser. You're a loser. But Gracyn and Iris, they're talking about Pepe, and she's talking about how she likes him, and Iris is like, yeah, he likes you too. And Grayson's like, really? She was like, for some reason, I feel like he's pulling back. Pepe's over there telling TJ and Taylor that he hasn't felt a spark from Gracyn. I said, but you turned Andreina down last night because you claimed that you wanted to see it through with Gracyn, but you didn't feel a spark. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Like, this cast is so mind-boggling to me. I'm like, what is wrong with y'all? We are in week 4 going into week 5. There's 6 weeks of the show. And it's just like nobody's really solid. It's weird. But he then says like he's been trying to figure out how to tell her because it's not really a her thing. It's a me thing. Y'all know how that goes. It's a me. It's not you. It's me. We know it's you, but we find out why in a minute. But Gracyn then tells Iris that it's weird because what happened? Like he didn't like when he chose she said it was weird because of what happened because he didn't actually choose to send Hannah home. But my whole thing is, and I'm going to state it again later on, he knew that he had those feelings for Hannah. So if you knew you had them feelings for Hannah, you should have left with her. Why did you stay here if you had these feelings for Hannah? And it's like, granted, you could say, oh, I just wanted to get the Love Island experience. I want to see if there's somebody else here. But no, if you felt so strongly about Hannah, leave the show. Leave the show. Be like KK. Do y'all think KK and Keenan are going to be on Love Island Games? I think so. And I'm actually here for it because I want to see that mess again. It's been a while. But he says that Pepe says that the past couple days Hannah has been on his mind a lot. I said again, like, go home. But he then says that he doesn't want to string Gracyn along and ruin her experience. And I'm like, you're essentially stringing her along. Kind of ruining her experience, but that's her own fault because just because she's in a couple with you does not mean that she can't explore other people. But we'll get to that in a minute. But Austin, he then gets a text stating that it's time for them to stand on business in the Villa game and to pretty much get everything off of y'all's chest. Iris gets a text that says y'all can choose to either write it anonymously or sign your name. I would have signed my name because I ain't no punk. Anything I can say behind your back or anonymously, I could say that shit to your face. I would have said it with my chest. You would have known that Grant LaShawn said that shit. I did. But Ace, like me, said he gonna sign the shit. I respect it. TJ says the same. I respect it. Clarke says if it ain't direct, she don't want it. I respect it. Huda then tells us that if somebody got some shit to say about her, say it. I said, you better not cry then. Don't cry then. Remember, it's a game. Remember, it's all a challenge, Huda. But Amaya says she got a lot of shit to say, and I know she do. But they head off to go write their shit down, and it's intense already. It's already intense. I was already getting that vibe. Chelley says that she's serious about standing on business. She backed that shit up. Olandria says she gonna sign her name on it. Respect. She did. She backed her shit up. Cierra and Olandria, they end up telling Chelley, even though you haven't talked to Huda and Chris, you gotta address this shit. I agree. But Chelley then asked if Olandria is doing one for Taylor, and she was like, should I? What should I say? Chelley says, I mean, ever since he talked to you and said that essentially he wanted to still explore you, has he really given you energy that has matched that after the conversation that y'all had? And she's like, yeah, you're right. He ain't done none of that shit. And I'm glad she wrote that down, and I'm glad she's going to address it because Clarke needs to hear that. Clarke needs to hear that. But she starts writing that down. Jaden then tells Clarke that Taylor is going to get roasted. Clarke then says that she's just worried about what people are going to say about her. Nobody's thinking about you, Clarke, besides Taylor. Let's keep it all the way above. But she then tells us that she doesn't like being in the mess, but she feels like she's going to have to. The way you acted later on, it doesn't give that you don't like being in the mess. Like, Clarke was looking for a moment later on, but we'll get to it. But everybody's on edge because they know it's about to get messy. And Chelley then says in hers to Huda, blunt, straightforward, no punk shit. But Huda then says that she knows she got some shit coming her way, essentially. Like, she knows. But they go ahead and drop their postcards off, and I'm about to pause real quick so I can get me a drink because we about to get into this game right now. A lot of energy. Here we go. All right, so everybody gets to the fire pit to play Stand on Business. So the Islanders will read their postcards or go up to the little mailbox, pull their mail out. Some have more than others. They're going to read it out loud, and then they can respond. I'm going to take my time with this because there's a lot of shit that I want to debunk, and I don't want to miss too much. Bitch ass, Trumpy, Austin, he's up first. His first one was anonymous, and it's talking about how they don't know how he made it this far in the game because he doesn't give anybody any effort. Any girl that he's been attached to, he gives no effort at all. He's just in the villa to have a vacation to have the time of his life. Where was the fucking lie? I've been saying it all season. This nigga literally does nothing but complain and do nothing. You're the only man. No, I ain't gonna say the only. Well, I guess I can say that because Taylor has started to do more for Clarke. But you're the only man in this villa that has not actually put forth an effort to truly truly let these women know that you've been coupled with or that you claim you have interest in, that you truly like them. You don't show them that. Besides having stupid, dumb, meaningless conversations. Like, the only conversation that you had of substance was about your open heart surgery. That was it. Everything else is stupid shit. But he then says that he doesn't agree with that because he's had great conversations and has given his all to get to know the girls. And Jaden ends up backing him up. Chelley looking like, please. Like, he ain't do shit. And she knows it, and it's the truth. But Andreina, she states that she's the one that wrote it. And she says, essentially, I wrote that because of the love triangle that you had between Chelley and Ace. Ace was putting forth the effort to really win her over and show that he really likes her, and you weren't doing none of that shit. You didn't even put up a fight to even try and get her. Where was the fucking lie? We literally talked about it. Ace was literally putting in groundwork to let Chelley know, I like you, I want you. What was Austin doing? Sitting around bitching and complaining. Every time he got to Chelley, I mean, I'm so tired of being in this love triangle. What are you doing to not be in that shit? What are you doing? Nothing. I can't stand him. I can't wait to get into him in a minute. But Andreina states that Cierra then says, like, to me, no, Cierra goes up next. So hers is to, why did I say her and Cierra? I think it was Nick and Cierra about them fucking in the bedroom. We don't need to talk about that. Cierra then has one from Pepe, and it's addressed to her, Olandria, and Chelley about them sending Hannah home. He essentially asked her, like, I don't know why y'all sent Hannah home because she was the only one in the house to make a connection, and like the logic behind that made no sense. I wanted to hear how they were going to explain this because, I mean, obviously it made no sense. I was okay with Hannah going home because I wanted Amaya to stay. And in the moment, I wanted Iris to stay too. Would I have changed that decision? No, I wouldn't have. I still would have sent Hannah home. But I understand why people are upset about it. I do, because it made no sense considering what they were stating. But Cierra then says it was Hannah, Iris, and Amaya. And she said she felt like Iris had some connection with TJ that was kind of building. Amaya has not really had the chance to really connect with somebody in the villa on a romantic level. Hannah had the chance to explore two connections, and you came in being adamant about wanting to explore all other connections, but once you connected with Hannah, it was basically tunnel vision and you didn't really connect with anybody else, or at least try to get to know anybody else. The way she put it, I understood what she was stating, but the way I think Chelley had stated it, she made it seem like somebody wasn't really putting, or at least didn't have a connection or whatever. It wasn't really getting connections. If I'm remembering correctly, I might be remembering it wrong, but in the moment, it just didn't make sense to that extent. But what she's stating is what she stated. She then says maybe if Hannah was here, you wouldn't have the connection that you have with Gracyn. So essentially, I sent her home to give you that, even though she don't realize that he really wanted Hannah. But well, at least I'm pretty sure she does now that he asked her that question. Because, like, why would you ask that question when you got Gracyn and you claim to be all about her? But Olandria pretty much back her on that. They're pretty much like, yeah, exactly what she stated is exactly why we did it. But Cierra then asked him, okay, so who would you have chosen? If you were in that position and you had those three girls, who would you have sent home? He says, I memean, I would have to check up with my boys. Like, no, I was right there with her. She said, I refuse to believe that you have not thought that. That's not fair for you to sit there and say that. Because it's true. Like, shit, if you got such an issue with her sending Hannah home, you know who you would have sent home. So why can't you state it? Why you got to consult with somebody else to get an opinion? Like, that's the thing with this cast. A lot of this cast don't have their own brain. They have to, well, it's really with the men, though. I feel like the women, for the most part, the women have their own minds. For the most part. The men, apart from Ace and Jeremiah, they have their own minds. Or the rest of them don't have their minds. So we'll get to that, though. But she then states that we then get Amaya. Ooh, this right here had me heated. Heated. I'm probably going to get heated as I recant it. But she starts laughing as she gets up there because it's about her snoring. That's the first one. They started off light. Chris is the one that wrote it because he wakes up in the middle of the night hearing her snoring. But she gets one from an anonymous person who pretty much is talking about how she cries more than needed. And says she moves too fast for everybody. In my mind, I said Zach's bitch ass said this shit. She obviously starts getting emotional. Because, I mean, you're basically telling her that who she is too much. Which, fuck you, because she might be too much for you, but she's not too much. Like, she's her own person. That's who she is. They really pissed me off how they was trying to make her feel bad for being who she is. If she's emotional, that's who she is. Like, I don't personally like all that crying and stuff, but I would never try and make somebody feel like they are shit because they like to sit around, because they cry and they're emotional. They're in touch with their emotions. Man, I'm about to get into it. But she says, God forbid I'm a sensitive gangster. And she was like, many people view it as weakness, but after everything I've been through in my life, it's strength to me. And I said, I know that's right. She then says, like, if you view it as that, I'm not your cup of tea to be drinking. I said, you better say that shit, Amaya. Stand in your truth, know your worth. And I'm proud of her because she always has stated that. I know my worth. And she does. She's one of the only people on the show that has moved like she knows her worth. Yes, she's gotten hurt a couple times, but she's never lost who Amaya is at the core. And that's why she's my favorite person on the show. She's 100% my favorite person. She brings a light to the show that makes it a little bit more exciting to watch because she's the bright spot in the show to me. Like, every time she's on the screen, I know I'm going to laugh. I know I'm going to have an emotion. She pulled at my heartstrings here. If I was super emotional, I probably would have cried, but I had an inner cry. Shout out to New York. But I love Amaya. I love her. I love how she's just genuinely herself, unapologetically that. And even though she'll cry about it, she'll let you know, I don't give a fuck what you got to say. I'm going to still be me. And if you don't like that, it's not for you. But we get to finding out who it is because Nick said, who said it? The biggest bitch on the show, and yeah, I said it, the biggest bitch on the show is Austin. He's the one that said it. I said the audacity of you to say that shit when she literally asked you to your face, if I'm doing anything that makes you uncomfortable, can you tell me that? And you sat there and said nothing. That would have been an opportunity for you to say this. Even though you would have still, I probably would have socked him in his shit if I was Amaya. But you could have said that shit then. But he says it might come off harsh, but when we were coupled up, all your emotions just kept building up because she's an emotional person, you fool. Like, she was actually trying to get to know you. She was being herself, unlike you. You weren't being yourself with her. Fucking, I can't stand him. Amaya then says, like, people can't express themselves the way I do, essentially. I have control over my emotions. I know what I'm feeling. I know how to tell people how I'm feeling. And she says, I'm tired of people viewing that as a negative. A says, time out. You're passionate, but when you say babe so much, this pissed me off with Ace. When you say babe so much, it comes off strong. Nigga, you know she was not stating that shit in a romantic way. She literally told you that's just how I talk. Like, people say babe all the time. Some people say dude or bruh and babe and girl. Like, y'all know how some women do that shit. Sometimes women will literally call a man a girl unintentionally. It's just the way that they talk. Like, you can address that, which I understand. You have that boundary to address it. But when you know it's not coming from a position that you thought it was when she already addressed it, brush the shit off. It's not that deep. Like, the way Ace was on that shit, it blew me. Like, why are you still on that shit? But he says, essentially, I wanted you to slow it down. And it's essentially about meeting people where they're comfortable. And you got to meet us on that same playing field. And I'm like, she wasn't meaning it romantically. I was like, y'all are insane. But this is where Bryan got points for me. I said, finally, because they all were pissing me off. Nobody was saying anything to at least stand up for her and help her out because she's sitting up there getting basically attacked. Bryan vouches in and says, which I was like, this is the realest one out here. He says, in Hispanic households, essentially that's how we talk. We have like these little pet names and stuff. I know my Hispanic people, y'all gonna let me know. This type of shit happens. He said, this is the type of shit that happens. And you're telling her to meet you halfway. You got to meet her halfway. I said, fucking preach. I about got up and was about to do the fucking holy dance. But he was stating that. And I said, exactly, Bryan, exactly. And Amaya thanks him for doing that. But she was like, thank y'all for sharing y'all's thoughts. And she's getting emotional as she's doing it. You can tell she's trying to be a good sport, but she's hurt. It's just like, damn, y'all just basically made me feel like I'm shit for being me. Hers hit harder because all of that shit was unnecessary. It was just like they were just literally trying to make her feel bad for being herself. Everything else was like actions that were done. Hers was about her. And that shit was next level disgust. That was disgusting to me. That was extremely disgusting. And she ends up stating that she needs a break. Where am I at? I think she said it. Yeah, she said she needed a break. And she got up. And again, nobody was getting up. But Cierra and Ace get up. And I was like, Ace, what are you getting up for? But then again, I was like, I want to hear what he has to say. If he does go over there and comforts her, I do want to hear what he has to say. But Zach sits there and tells him, Ace, no, come back. Shut up. Like, you shut up. And I wanted Ace to go over there. But Cierra, of course, Sierra's the one that gets up. And then Huda finally gets up. I'm like, Huda, she's always... And that's what pissed me off, though, about none of them, but really the girls. Like, they all made me mad. Like, apart from... And Cierra pissed me off too because she sat down too long. But she got up, so I can't really add her in that. Huda, same thing with Cierra, but she got up too. So I mean, But Olandria, Cierra, Chelley, Iris. I want to include the Casa girls, but they really don't know Amaya like that. But the ones that have been there with Amaya the whole time when she's really been comforting them, it pissed me off that they sat there and saw her getting emotional and needing to be comforted, and they did nothing. They sat there and just watched. Didn't really speak up for her at all. Didn't even get up to go comfort her. The only ones that did was Cierra and Huda. But she goes over to the kitchen area and she's crying, and Cierra's over there pretty much like pouring into her, telling her like, you're amazing. Who you are is who you are, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, so, and then Huda's over there with her as well. But Cierra then tells her that Zach is a fucking child, and he is. That's what I was stating earlier when Olandria was like, he's mature. He's not. He's a little bitch. Because Zach said something too. I forgot. He ended up trying to state shit too before she left off. Yes, I skipped over that. Hold on. Zach started trying to talk too, and she was like, you had every opportunity to say that shit to me when I was talking to you earlier. Exactly. And she was like, oh, you want to do it now when you got 20 people here? You want to do it when you have an audience so you can embarrass me? I was like, get him, Amaya, because fuck you. Fuck you. But let me pause so I can take a breather. All right, so we then move to Pepe. And his question was, since Hannah had left, he's basically been playing it safe, and we know he don't like Gracyn. Where's the lie? He then asked who wrote it. He claims that he's been trying to explore Gracyn, but he doesn't feel good getting. He basically said he doesn't feel like it was good having something good attached from aka Hannah. So Gracyn obviously says, like, I mean, obviously it doesn't feel good, but like, what you're saying and doing, what are you doing to these people that are making them state this? Like, what are you doing and saying that is making this still relevant? Valid question. But she then says essentially like, I genuinely want to make a connection in here. You know that. You know why I came here. She's basically letting it be known. I am here for love. I want to make a connection. And she says, I see it possibly with you. You don't need to see it anymore. But she says, if it's still relevant, you need to think about giving me the opportunity to get to know other people. Gracyn, you don't have to just be stuck with him. Yes, you're in a couple with him, but you still can go talk to other people. Like, do you not realize that? Like, you can. I get what you're stating, but it's just like, I don't. At the same time, it's 50-50. Like, he's not locked in on you completely, and you're not closed off, so you can still go talk to other people. But we get to Ace. And I already knew Ace was going to be on that time. I already knew. When he got up, you could already tell he was going to be defensive as fuck. I was like, Ace about to get it. But he then gets a question about him and Chelley being so strong. Why have y'all not closed off? And Amaya was the one that said it. So he then says that he wanted, talking about Chelley, wanted to test the connection. I said, nigga, you literally told her numerous times that you were open to exploring and still were open to exploring. So obviously she's going to continue to be open to exploring. Like, you can't just say she was the one that stopped you from closing it off, because you could have closed that shit off for her before Casa Amor. She would have been willing to do that, honestly. But you decided to still be open, and you just happened to let her go get another connection. But we'll get to that in a minute. But he then says, like, he's never been the controlling type. That's why he's been tripping out so much, because he's finally not had control. Like, Ace has had control over this game the entire time until Casa Amor happened. The recoupling happened when he sent Coco home, and then tried to vouch for Coco to stay, which I was all here for it, because I want Coco on the show. That face has to be on the TV. But the fact that he didn't get to keep Coco, this was the first time that Ace has been solo dolo with only one connection. Y'all realize that? Every other time he's had two connections that he's been able to control. If that one connection got away, he went back to Chelley. Every single time. This is the first time where Ace only has Chelley. But this is the first time now that Chelley doesn't just only have Ace. She got Chris too. Yes, she had Austin, but she didn't want him. Like, and he didn't want her either, even though he tried to make it seem like he did. But he then says, like, essentially, I wasn't gonna tell her to close off if she still got connections and she don't want to. Austin then writes him a note, pretty much stating like, Ace's posse doesn't go against you, and Jeremiah was damned if he did and damned if he didn't. I said, ooh, he clocked him, because that was a clock. It was a clock. And Ace ends up stating, before I answer this, what do you mean by this, Austin? I said, he about to light him up, and I'm about to be here for it. I was like, this is where Ace gonna win me back. But he did. Austin's bitch ass can't even, like, it took him a minute to respond. because he's a bitch. You getting bitched at by somebody who's like half your height, but funny. But he then says that he felt bad for Jeremiah because y'all essentially gave him shit from the beginning. That is true. And said that Ace is a strong leader, essentially, and what you say pretty much goes, and nobody goes against it. Taylor sitting over there making faces like he's not the biggest bitch to Ace. Ace got you on a leash. Like, you the last one to be making a face. Because what Austin said was true. But Ace then says, ask Andreina. Well, he then asked Andreina, and she feels like Jeremiah was coming off a little bit too strong. And she says, yeah. I'm like, what, Andreina? You think so? Because, I mean, Jeremiah was literally right there with you on the same speed. Y'all were getting to know each other. And he actually took the correct approach this time. And y'all both leaned into that kiss. So I don't know what was so strong about that, but okay. But Ace then says, that's my point about the love bombing shit, which I still don't agree with. But he says, just because I have the balls to say it, one of the two of us is 6'5", the other is 5'10". 5'10" is questionable, but okay. He says, but one of us has the balls to say it, and it's me. I'm the one that has the balls to say it. I'm the one who has heart and can stand on business and state what I got to say, and you're the one that don't. I said, get him, Ace. I said, get him. He slid the fuck out of Ace. Or he slid the fuck out of Austin. And he then says, like, when it comes to Amaya, you gave her a whole different side. You was coming to us telling us how much you this, and this that you don't like about her, but when you got up around her, you never said that shit. I said, fucking get him, Ace. Get him. I said, the right person, he asked the right person the wrong question to get them hired. Because Ace would have been the one to light him up. And that's exactly what the fuck he did. But Ace says, essentially, I stand on shit. If I got something to say and I want to stand on that shit, I'm going to stand on that shit. And I do it every single time. You don't. You don't. He says, every time you relayed feelings about Amaya, it was always negative. It was nothing great. Austin sitting there trying to save face, talking about something. I mean, I said a little bit there, but I did say that I really do like her. Like, shut the fuck up. Shut up. Because when you say more negative shit about her, that means that you really don't like her. Because if you have more negatives to say than positives, that means you don't like her. That means you don't like her. But Amaya is now pitching in now, talking about like that shit don't matter. And he says, this is not your conversation. Nigga, fuck you. You're talking about her. It is her conversation because it's about her in her face. What do you mean? What do you mean? Shut up. Shut up. But then he then says, this is an opportunity to air all of this out. Because she pretty much stated, like, you had every opportunity to say some shit and you ain't say it. Come on, keep it real. But he says, this is the opportunity to air it out. Like I just said, you had the opportunity, but you bitched out. You bitched out. But this is where I could have went through that TV, y'all. I'm not lying to y'all. I could have went through that TV and the Trumpy jumped out. This is some Donald Trump shit. He literally says, this was so foul. Do you not understand what it means to air out? The way I could have went through that screen, and I'm glad Amaya checked him. Don't you dare disrespect me. I don't need you to interpret anything. I said, so you basically trying to make, because she has a strong Hispanic accent, that she can't understand what the fuck you talking about? Who the fuck do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Disrespectful. And she was like, I'm glad you acting the way you are because your true colors are shown. I said, exactly. Thank you, Ace. Ace gave him the chance to show his ass, and he took his pants off and turned the fuck around and said, look, here it is. Because you know he liked to get spanked. So he gave it to him. He gave them his ass to see. And she was like, your true colors are showing. And she was like, I'm glad we're having this challenge because you would have never said this shit to my face. I said, exactly, because he wouldn't have, because he's a bitch. He's a bitch. But he then says that he was focused. He was so focused. I don't know what I said. Yo, I was laughing. I done got so hot and so pissed I couldn't even read my damn note. He says that he was confused because of this reaction. Basically trying to gaslight her now. Basically saying, oh, well, you acting a fool. You screaming and stuff now. Now I don't know what I'm... Sitting here trying to... Like, you see how they do that shit? Like, this was some Karen shit. Now that she's pissed off, rightfully so, now you want to make it seem like she's doing too much. This is what you did to her earlier. And she was like, no, like, what reactions? You're the one who got your veins popping out your neck. I said, get them, girl. Well, she then says, am I bugging? And Olandria and Chelley, I'm glad they said, no, you're not. Because Amaya is black, too. People don't realize that Dominicans are black. I'm glad they stood up for her because they could literally paint her out to be the aggressor in the situation when he was passive aggressive with her. Like, she gave him the reaction because he literally forced it out of her. But we get Chelley. Chelley's up next. She got a couple cards. She said, y'all got some shit to say? So the first one, and Chelley was super. One thing about Chelley, she's super calm. She's calm, but she's very firm with what she was stating. But Chelley said some things that I was like, can't defend you on this one. But first, she was like, the first question was, I don't understand the boundaries that you have set when you want to keep exploring that. And that was from Ace, obviously. So they rehashed the same conversation they had before. And she says, essentially, you initiated the opening to be exploring, which is true. He then says, that's not a problem it's not a problem that you're exploring. It's the fact that you're putting a boundary on me while doing that. And I don't get that. That I do understand. When Ace said that, I did understand what he was stating. But it's like, to what extent? But I get what he's saying. But she then says it was to make us both feel comfortable. But did you not tell me that you wanted to be open? But now that I am, it's a problem. Same shit I said last night. He don't like the fact that he's on the other end now. He doesn't have another connection in the house that he actually wants besides Chelley. So, I mean, I get that too. But they then ask everybody, like, are we tripping? Both have points. Like I said, both of them have points. Both of them make very valid points. But Cierra then says, essentially, like, when she says that she wants to put a boundary, I believe that she believes in what y'all have, essentially. So she basically wants you to move forward through these challenges with that in mind. Basically, you have to decide what you really want to go too far into in these challenges. Ace then says, I get that, but when it comes to that, what do I look like dialing my shit back for when she's still exploring? Ace, what? So you gonna go all the way in when you claim that you really want her like that? She can explore other people just like you can. Y'all both can explore other people, but there's a certain level that you should go when it comes to physicality and emotionally. Like, if you really are serious about her, you either lock it in, or when you're in these challenges, you don't go too far. You don't do too much. And that was the issue. You did a little bit too. You did a lot. But I get where he's coming from, because later on we're going to get into it. But Ace then says that she then reads the next message, which is it's to her and Chris about essentially voiding conversations since Casa Amor. And Bryan is the one that wrote that. So she says essentially things that were said in Casa Amor have not been followed up here. Basically, Chris is pretty much telling her that he essentially was going to apply pressure. He hasn't really done that to her. Chris then asked what? She was like, basically avoiding eye contact, no conversation. When I don't really see anything significant, I don't want to ruin what I have. I said, Chelley, this is not a good look. I said, so why are you still open to exploring if you don't see? And that's the same question I had before. If you see something in Chris, or you see something in Ace that Chris doesn't have, why are you still exploring Chris? Like, why? I don't get that. But he then says, like, I don't have nothing else. So she then reads the next question. And it's about how Chelley said it was just a challenge. Who do you think wrote it? Huda. But she then asks, who wrote this so I can understand who I need to be referring to and what you're referring to. Huda then says, I wrote it. Completely contradicting. Because why would you ask this question when you claim that you knew that you was wrong? So you're going to sit here and ask her and say, oh, well, it's just a challenge. I thought it was just a challenge, Chelley. But if you said that you knew why you was wrong, you should know why she said what she said. So why are you asking her this now? That proves you Huda plays in mind games. Some of y'all going to eat it up. I don't. But she then says, Chelley says, when Jeremiah and you were together. No, this is Huda. Huda says when her and Jeremiah were together, she felt like Chelley was always telling her to relax in the challenges, which you needed to. She's not telling you a lie. And Chelley says, I only recall stating that when you were tweaking out on them bombshells. I said, finally somebody in there actually called her out about calling the bombshells bitches and shit. And that's basically what Chelley said. She was like, you were sitting here going off on them and doing this and doing that whenever they was doing shit in the challenges. And she said, there's been too many times where I've given you chance after chance after chance. And now it's gotten to the point where it's starting to aggravate me. Finally. But then again, Chelley, you should have sent her ass home. You should have sent her home. But to the people that want to make Chelley out to be the villain in the Huda and Chelley situation, Chelley, as she just stated, she gave her more chances than she should have. She has. She stood behind Huda every single time when she should have sent her ass home. But y'all want to make it seem like Chelley's the mean girl. Chelley's out here trying to bully Huda. No. Huda was the bully. Huda was the one going around here talking shit about every single girl that walked in that house and had interest in Jeremiah. Who's the one that's not a real girl's girl? But y'all like to forget certain shit. But when it's a black woman, y'all want to start talking about everything and everything else. People want to say it's not about race. It is about race. We're going to have that conversation. I'm not afraid to have those uncomfortable conversations that a lot of y'all don't want to talk about because y'all have an unconscious bias towards black people. Let's keep it real. Let's keep it all the way a buck. I'm going to talk about it because I'm not scared. I don't care if you got a problem. Don't get down there and call me an Nigger again. But guess what? You'll get blocked if you do. I don't care. But she said that. Huda then says essentially it won't happen again. And I hate that it made you upset. All I can say is that I'm sorry. And she then says at the end of the day, a challenge doesn't compare to our friendship. And all I can ask for is forgiveness. And I'm like, why would Chelley forgive you when she's literally saw you do the same thing to Hannah, then you did it to her? She'd be stupid to forgive you again because you're probably going to do it again. Because if you did it twice, you're probably going to continue to do that because that's the type of person that you are. I wouldn't forgive her. You fool me. Like what I said a couple episodes for the recoupling when Taylor chose Clarke. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You're not going to fool me twice. No, ma'am. But Chelley ends up saying, I'm done with the questions. Huda sitting there with them victim tears. Huda goes up next. The first one was about Hannah being robbed from her experience. Twice. It says that you should have been dumped from the island. Guess who it came from? Fake ass Nicolas. I said the same person that has been sitting here vouching for Huda. Vouching for her. Basically told her, your ass should have been gone. But I mean, he did. I mean, he stood on it in regards to the votes. Like, he did vote her out both times. But he pretty much stated that, too. He's like, it's not a surprise because I did vote you out twice. And I felt like Hannah and Charlie's relationship disappearing was essentially sad because you've gotten a lot of opportunities. And Huda was like, I mean, I feel like I've grown a lot. I've made mistakes, but that's life. And then Casa happened, and I felt like I did try that to my fullest. You haven't grown, Huda. You really haven't. Yes, you've made mistakes, and you're going to make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. All of us are going to make mistakes. We're not perfect. That's not the issue. The things that you do, though, you know what you're doing. You know what you're doing. And that's not growth. And like I told y'all, the growth is going to happen off the show. She's got to go and get therapy. Like, her being on this show to build a relationship with somebody when she don't love this person first, it's never going to work. And even though I'm hard on Huda, everything I'm stating is from a place of care, honestly. Like, truthfully, I'm not a fan of her, but I don't want her to go through life always having these issues because, as we all see, it's an internal thing. She got to love who Huda is first. Her lashing out at every single woman that comes in, that's just jealousy. That's self-hate. That's self-hate. Her stating what she said yesterday, would it be worse if I was ugly? Would it be even a thing if I was ugly? You basically trying to imply that Chelley's jealous of you. Like, be for real. You're the one that's jealous. You're the one that's mad because she gets all the attention that you want from the men that you want. And that's another thing. She spends too much time wanting validation from men. You shouldn't get that validation from men. You should get that validation from inside because you love who you are as a person. And that's the problem. She's never going to find a healthy relationship until she does that work first. And if she doesn't do that work, she's never going to get there. And it's never going to be good for her. And I would like that to happen for her. I want the best for her, honestly, even though I'm not a fan of her, especially because she has a child. And eventually that man that she ends up falling in love with is going to be the dad to her child. And I would like to hope that she would have a good life. But the next question, the Casa boys, they essentially were vouching for her when she said she was exploring. But the next question is asking essentially if she's a girl's girl. And she was like, we're on Love Island and nobody is pretty much owned to anybody else if they're open, especially. I said, you need to ask yourself that question because you acted completely different. It's funny that you're stating that now because the one person that you truly were obsessed with is gone. He's gone. But that was Chelley's question. Well, actually, it wasn't. This is Chelley's question because she signed it. Standing on business. She says, if you're going to preach about being a girl's girl, you better practice what you preach. Hello? Hello? If you want loyalty and respect from your girls and then to not give it, that's crazy. And then she says, if your intentions are at the best interest of your girls, stop being selfish, essentially, and stand on your shit. Chelley clocked her. But Chelley then says, I mean, it's essentially about everything. Like, because Huda ends up asking her why. And she was like, it's everything. Essentially, like, you didn't stand on your shit about the girl shit. She says, when the whole Chris shit, like, it just didn't sit right with me when you made it like a win-win situation. And Huda was like, but I was interested in Chris. Chelley said, what? She says, bringing Chris back wasn't just for you. Chelley said, but you literally said that you was bringing him back because that's what I would want. And she did say that. She did. So she basically just proved again, you're a liar. You're a liar. So Chelley then says, like, if it was for you, stand on that shit. Like, stand on it. And I would have respected you for that. What have I been saying? What have I been saying? If you're going to be shady, I can respect it when you're upfront with it. Don't be shady and then try and act like you're not doing that. I can't respect that shit. But Huda then says that, because Iris ended up co-signing Chelley too. But Huda then says, like, she hasn't lied about it. And even encouraged Chris to get to know Chelley. I said, but you were sitting there bitching about 2 pancakes. Sitting there bitching about him giving her 2 pancakes because you weren't the favorite. You want to explore those connections. And he explored it. And if he has a preference over you, then that's his preference. And that's up to you if you want to continue to pursue somebody when you're the second pick. But you're a pick-me, so that's what you do. But Huda then says, it wasn't just for me. It was also for you. Chelley sitting there shaking her head. But Olandria then pipes in and says, if you wanted her to continue to explore and you value sisterhood, I know you don't kiss and tell. Can you explain for the class? I said, oh no. Because Olandria asked a valid question, but I can see how this could be used against her because of the whole Cierra stuff. Like, I can see how it could be used against her. I was like, no, Olandria, don't say it. Don't you be the... I'm glad she asked the question, but then again, I'm not. Because I don't want it to be thrown back in her face. Because it could be used on her. But Huda then says, what do you mean? Chelley says, tell the class what? She asks Olandria, like, tell the class what? Olandria says they kissed in the speakeasy, and she said that she wanted to explore their connection. I said, ooh. I said, this friendship might be over. But Chelley essentially says, I don't care about their connection. And Huda says, do I need to tell the whole class? Like, I told the girls that I trusted. But my whole thing is, she's right. But then again, you being this girl's girl and you encouraging Chris to get to know, Chelley, and that's supposed to be your girl and whatever, and you're hiding that from her. Is that girl's girl shit? So, like, it's 50-50 with me. But Chris then says that's nobody's business. It's not, but if you were pursuing Chelley and you still wanted to pursue her and actively pursue her and have her thinking that you were, and you hid that from her too, you look shady too, Chris. You do. But Olandria then says, but she keeps stating that this was for Chelley. This was for Chelley. And if you respect sisterhood, then respect sisterhood. Exactly. But I keep thinking about Olandria with Cierra. Whenever she says this, she's right, but it's just like, wrong messenger at this point. But Huda then starts hollering, yelling, I can't kiss a guy like God effing forbid. I don't cuss with God in the same sentence. Like, but she then says that screaming and hollering at her. Screaming and hollering. I said, if Olandria pipes back at her, I'm glad she started it first. Because Olandria was calm the whole time. Chelley was as well. Both of them. Huda's the one screaming and getting hypey. But let it have been a black woman. Let it have been a black woman. That's all I'm going to say. But they all looking like this is the changed woman. But Chris then says that he doesn't think that it's right to air out that shit. I said, but you were never going to tell Chelley, though. I'm like, they didn't have to air it out, but you would have never told Chelley. And that's the girl that you claimed that you wanted, but you kissing behind her back. But whatever. But she don't want you, so I mean... But then again, do we know that she wants him or not? But he then says that it's nobody's business but him and Huda's, which I mean, essentially it is. But Olandria then says, I mean, well, it's out now. I said, damn. But Huda then says Chelley and Ace can kiss people and still have connections. They've never kissed anybody outside of a challenge. They haven't. So your point is null and void. You trying to point the finger because you've done that shit. That's what it is. But she then, Chelley is sitting there shaking her head. And Huda says, I can kiss people that I like. I can kiss what I want to. I can kiss whoever I want to kiss. And you can. You can, but stand on it. Stop trying to act like you're not doing something knowing that you're doing it. That's the problem. That's what Chelley said. If you're going to do the shit, stand on it. Don't sit here and act like you're doing something that you're completely oblivious to. But Cierra's sitting there smirking the whole time. And Huda then says, when I tell you something, Olandria, it's between me and you. Olandria says, I get that, but if you're going to keep pumping this sisterhood shit, you wouldn't move like that. Y'all know why I'm laughing. But Huda then says, like, when I want to tell it, I can talk about it. I said, you still sitting here hollering, and they still sitting there calm. And she's like, that's not your place. But she says, fuck this game, and throws the cards. I said, Huda, I thought it was just a challenge. It's just a game. It's just a game. But Chris goes up next. He gets his first question from Cierra. She pretty much is asking him about his intentions with Huda. Are they genuine or not? Or do you just want a spot in the villa? He's like, I mean, they are genuine. I could give a fuck less if I'm in this villa or overseas. I could be playing ball. I said, I mean, they're really only genuine now, truthfully, because Chelley don't want you. But I mean, I get it. But next, they end up asking him about him changing his mind so quickly, like how he went from Chelley to Huda so quickly. Backup plan. That's really what it is. But he then says like his plan was to focus on Chelley. He then asks if anybody else has something to say. Nobody really says anything besides Huda, who says like we both expressed interest in each other prior to recoupling. He then says the interest is there. Cierra then says, what does Cierra say? She said, then say it because it hasn't really been said much. And now that you stated that, I'll back off now. Chelley then asked him about like, why did you switch up? The switch up is insane because if you just wanted to come into the villa, you could have just said that shit. I said, Chelley, that's not a good look. And why I say it's not a good look is because she's basically making Ace seem like he's the priority, but she's still exploring those other connections. But this right here makes it look like you really want Chris. So it's like, Chelley, why are you so bothered by it if you really want Ace? I was like, that's not a good look. And I said, Ace probably is not going to like this. And in this point, I can't be mad at him. I can't. Because that's not a good look. I put myself in Ace's shoes. I wouldn't be happy about it either. Because it's like, if you pumping up to me that I'm priority, but you sitting here asking another man these type of questions, you look like you actually are really interested in him. And I might need to bow out gracefully. But she then says, like, I just don't want it to feel like, did she say that? She said, it doesn't feel like you went as hard as you claimed that you were going to do when you came in here. But it is what it is. And he says, well, I'm not here to play a safe role. Olandria, she goes up next. Her question, and her only question, was from Clarke. This is what I said earlier. She's looking for a moment. Clarke is literally looking for a moment. She then says, I know that you think that I'm just a test and it was only physical, but essentially it's more than that. Like, we have a connection. Olandria said, okay, congrats. I said, exactly. Don't give her no energy. Because she wanted it. That was what Clarke was trying to get out of her. She was trying to get a lot of energy out of Olandria, and she didn't get it from her. But Clarke then says, the only thing during our conversation that was off-putting to me was the whole test thing. You like making our connection seem like it's a test, even though we're all technically in here testing y'all's connections, but it's upsetting to feel like a test. I said, but you are a test though. I'm like, you should be having this conversation with production. You said, like, you making it seem like she's wrong for calling you a test, which, I mean, Olandria and Taylor didn't really have a connection to test, honestly, but this is a question for production. Like, if you don't want to be called a test, you should have been talking to them. But Olandria then says, thank you for signing, and I respect you for that. I respect that too. Like, she made it clear that was for me. But she says, Olandria then says, like, I say test to everybody when it comes to connections and stuff. It's not a direct jab at you. I'm not defining your journey as a test. But if it did come off distasteful, if it did come off like that, I do apologize because that's not what I mean. This is why I say Clarke wanted a moment. She accepts it and says, I know that's not what you meant. So why the fuck did you ask her the question? Why did you ask her the question? So Olandria says, does anybody else have anything they want to get off their chest? Nobody says anything. She says, okay, didn't think so. I said, oh, she ate that. She ate that one. But Taylor, he's last up. This nigga tried to get some balls for once with a woman. But he then got a stack. He got a stack of cards. And he's taking them out, talking about something, y'all ready for the sermon? I said, so you're going to have to actually speak and open your mouth and enunciate to actually be a preacher. But okay. But the first one he gets is asking him about how he and Olandria's connection changed so quickly if it was so strong. It wasn't strong, but okay. But he then says Clarke essentially gave him a different feeling, like a childlike feeling. Olandria says, how old are you? I said, get him. He says 25. She says, oh. And then she says, he says, I can't have a kid feeling. You're 25 years old. You're a grown man. After a certain period of time, you don't need to be trying to act like a child. You're a grown man. Any grown man, I'm about to be 30 years old, sitting here talking about I got a kid feeling. No, I'm grown. I'm a grown ass man. I got a grown man feeling. That's what I got. But she was like, I mean, sure, you can have a kid feeling, like whatever. But you could tell Landry's about to light him up. But Huda then says, it's crazy how 3 days changed everything. And Taylor says, I have gotten to know her, talking about Olandria, for 3 weeks. Huda says, okay, but why are you telling Olandria that you're going to spend time with her and not do that? I said, okay, Huda. Okay, Huda, stand on business. But he then says, I'm trying. No, you're not. And then she says, you're trying? And Olandria was like, she goes and asks Clarke, do you think he's trying? And of course, she backs him up and says, yeah. But he then butts in too and says yes as well. But Olandria then has her question read. And hers says pretty much stand on business and stop acting like a little bitch. And she had a smiley face with it, and she's sitting there smiling at him. Even though I done called this man a bitch all throughout this thing, I don't like hearing it. But it's true. But I don't like hearing it. I have to clock Olandria for doing it because I clocked Huda for doing it. But I mean, it's true. But I mean, you get what I'm saying. But she then says, the night of the challenge, we had a chat. And you basically told me that you would have kissed me if you want. I mean, you would have kissed me and you wanted to kiss me, but you didn't do it out of respect for Clarke. That is not a lie. She told the truth. His face was cracked. She then says that you never spared my feelings. She said you never spared my feelings, but you're sparing hers. So I don't like that. And she has a valid reason to feel that way. Granted, Olandria should have saw the signs, but she's not lying. When you sit and think about it, this man, and he's still doing it to this day until he got called out in this moment. Strung her along, knowing that he doesn't like her, which means she's going to keep trying to pursue you, which you're embarrassing her, even though she's doing it too, because like she has a part in that, but it's larger. It's in large part to you as well, because you could be a man, but maybe you're a kid like you want to be. And you could have told her, look, I'm not seeing it for you. I don't like you like that. No disrespect to you, but I just don't see it for you. So she could have literally got that hint, even though she should have got it from the way you was acting. She could have moved on. But no, you decided that you wanted to embarrass her, and you still continue to try and embarrass her because you know that she actually likes you. And instead of being a grown man and shutting the shit down, you continue to egg the shit on. Yes, you made your decision with Clarke, but after the fact, you still started the shit and literally said that you still wanted to explore Olandria. No, you don't fucking like her. And you know you got Clarke here who you actually like. So it's like you about to ruin that too, but are you really? But, where am I at? Olandria then says it's always been fuck my feelings, so it's officially fuck yours. I said exactly. And she says you don't get that you're trying to explore like you stating that you are. You're telling different things, which he is. So she then says to Clarke, in case you didn't know that, he's telling me that he wants to explore to both of us. And she was like, yeah, I know because he told me that. Olandria says, but you don't move like that, essentially. And Cierra then says, when Taylor chose Clarke, that wasn't on some like get to know you type shit. Basically trying to back Olandria's claims. Which is true. Like, you made your choice when you chose Clarke. So for you to turn around and even though Olandria shouldn't still be entertaining him, he still turned around and still told her that he was still interested in getting to know her and still exploring her, which was stupid. They both were stupid in that moment. But Cierra says that. Olandria then says, like, you wanted to jump to the next girl, and that was some bullshit. If I was moving like Taylor, Taylor's ass wouldn't be here. Because when Jalen was here, I kept reassuring Taylor that I wanted you, and I wanted that man every motherfucking day. And she said, I ain't get shit from him. He ain't do shit for me. I said, go off. Go off. Normally, I'd be mad that she was giving him this energy, but he needed to hear it. He needed to hear it. But she then says, like, I've been so real with him, which she has. And she said, I can't express how fucking angry I am. And you know she was mad as fuck. Like, because it's like all that pent up shit. And she knows, I feel like in this moment, it finally clicked. Like, I've literally been embarrassing myself all this time, the entire time I've been here. And now I'm going to let you know, I don't fuck with you no more. And hopefully she don't, but we'll see. But she states all of that. And she's like, I've been holding it together, taking shit on the chin. And not once did I question my worth. Even though you was asking, I don't think she questioned it. But she was asking him questions and stuff about what she could do, which she should have never did. And she was like, you couldn't even state shit. You couldn't even tell me shit. And he still can. But she then says, like, a girl gets here, it gives you 3 days of attention, and you just fucking go. Olandria, it wasn't them 3 days. He was waiting on another girl to come in here that he actually was interested in, and Clarke finally did. But she then, and that was interested in him. That's also important. But she then says, go ahead and finish reading. So he then says, he started feeling tough here. Where you coming from? You want me to think and move for you? No. She wanted you to give the same energy she was giving you. That's what happens in a relationship. Maybe you are a kid. Because it's 50-50. When you're in a relationship, she's not just going to give you everything and you just going to sit there. You're going to have to move for her a little bit too. Like, if y'all a union, y'all move together. That's what a relationship is, nigga. Like, if you're not ready for that, you don't need to be on the show. Like, like what? Like, his mindset just proved that he is a child. Like, everything she said is true. But he says this is for everybody. How I move is for me. And how I move for me is a damn problem for you. I said, Clarke, you better be listening. He says, I fell for Cierra and I could have left you vulnerable. He's talking about when Cierra first came there and he stood up for her. And the Olandria's like, yeah, she gave you 5 minutes of conversation and that was enough for you to stand up. Exactly, Olandria. You should have known. He don't like me. He barely even talked to her, and he stood up for her. But he then says, "Can I finish?" He said, "You can, but it's just a bunch of bullshit," which it was. But he then says, "I mean, it's my experience too. It is, but you still strung her along. It's her experience as well. She's being tied to you by her own merit, but also to yours too, because you're feeding her a bunch of bullshit too. Like, let's keep it real." But he then says that he's moving to make a connection, not to keep her there, and that's his whole plan. He then says, like, he says, "You want me to move for you," essentially. And Pepe sitting there talking about he stood on business. You didn't. When it was your time, you barely could talk. But an anonymous told him to pretty much make up his damn mind. He said, "Since y'all want me to make it, anybody want to say who wrote it?" Nobody did. He ends up stating that he picks Clarke. We all knew that. Like, he thought he had a moment there. But Olandria was like, "Good, you finally made a decision again." But that was the episode, y'all. An hour and 30. An hour and 3 minutes. I did it. I knew it was going to be an hour long. But if y'all got this far and dealt with me screaming in this mic, let's hit it that. Let's try and get to like 1.2 thousand. Let's get this video up the views. Subscribe. Go to TikTok. Turn your post notifications on. Me and Elise going to be live tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern time to talk about this shit. We got a lot to talk about. And I know y'all want to hear it too. But I'm about to get this video up for y'all. And I'm going to bed. I got to work. Peace.